Hi, and welcome back to Cellar Notes. I'm Blair, and today we are fortunate enough to have been invited out to Cannon River Winery. Today we're in the Vineyard for Cannon River Winery in the beautiful Saugan Valley just south of Cannon Falls. We're joined today by John Maloney. John, thank you.
Thank
for
you,
inviting
Blair.
us out.
Our pleasure, our pleasure.
John and his wife Maureen, who is very busy picking grapes right now, are owners, proprietors of this venture. Why don't you tell me, John, what made you interested in this to begin with, and what got you started?
Yeah, sure. This is going back probably 6-7 years ago. I first came across the information from the University of Minnesota that you could grow cold hardy wine grapes in the state, and we were starting to produce some very nice quality wines. So I started doing some research and looked into the viability of this as a business and what the industry had in its future. And the more we looked into it, the more we liked it. So with that, I went out and started looking at pieces of ground and places where we could maybe grow some of these cold hardy grapes.
Let me ask you about that then. This particular, right now we're on a hillside. You can see the valley behind us. The hillside goes up and back. How many total acres do you have here on the vineyard site?
Sure, we have probably the biggest vineyard in the state right now. We have 20 acres inside of the perimeter fence, and it's almost all planted out to grapes right now. We have an acre or so to finish up in the next year or so. As a couple of varieties become available, we'll get that planted out as well. But this area that we're in is called the Saugan Valley. We're just south of Cannon Falls, and has several things going for it viticulturally. These are big south-facing hills overlooking the valley. That's just wonderful. That delineation, that slope delineation is really good for growing grapes. The soils are silty loams over limestone. It's just wonderful drainage. So we make the most of our summers here, and we can generally mature all our fruit.
Do you have to use any kind of drip irrigation, or is everything natural, whatever the clouds give you? Or
Well, up in Minnesota, we definitely have enough rainfall. Grapes like it a little more droughty anyway. So we do have, fortunately, we do have drip irrigation for our first year plantings. When the vines are small, the root mass is very small as well. So that's shallow. And this summer was a good example. We planted about 800 additional vines this spring. And we can water 4 rows at any given time. So we had our drip lines going on those vines throughout the month of June and into July anyway, through that dry, hot period.
those new vines, how long before they produce fruit for you?
It's 3 years before you have any fruit on those vines, and even that third year's harvest is a very small harvest, probably 50% of a mature vine.
So it's a good 4 years before you can take those grapes and use them to produce your wine.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, so to speak.
I would imagine not. How many different varieties of grapes do you use in this vineyard?
We've got 8 legitimate blocks of plantings right now. We grow anything from La Crosse, La Crescent, Edelweiss, St. Pepin, Prairie Star, Frontenac, Frontenac Gris.
This is the Prairie Star here?
This is actually St. Pepin. I just picked some of this from down. We're getting very close to harvesting St. Pepin here.
And the Prairie Star is what you're
Prairie
harvesting
Star
today.
is what we're working on today. That's right.
And this is the Frontenac.
This is Frontenac. Yeah.
And these are very small berries.
By comparison, they're a little smaller, but it's a very vigorous vine, and they're pretty heavy producing vines. So the tons of grapes per acre or pounds of grapes per vine winds up being fairly similar. Frontenac is one that we're kind of excited about this year because we've started a new type of trellising that we hope will help reduce the acidities and make it a little more usable in the winery. So we're hoping that works out for us this year.
Do you have a plan going into, say, the beginning of the year with you and your wife and Vincent, who is your winemaker,
Vincent
at the winery?
winemaker,
I believe we'll
right.
meet him later today.
Yeah, you sure will.
And do you have a plan going into the year and say, okay, the Frontenac we want to pick at this time of year or at this sugar content? Or is it just based on feel and what you see?
It's based on some of the winemaking parameters: sugar, acidity, pH, and then the flavor profile, the aromas in the grapes. And Vincent and I spend a fair amount of time the last week or two before the harvest begins in earnest going through the entire vineyard, looking at that flavor profile, checking Brix readings, and
Brix
really,
readings is the sugar content of the juice in the grape.
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We'll get those determinations, and then we start setting up our harvest schedules. But typically, when you plan your year, the harvest is always from the Labor Day till the second week of October. We're always going to be harvesting somewhere in there. This is a great site for growing grapes again, so we can be assured that we're going to have good, mature fruit no matter what our growing season is. But incidentally, southern Minnesota is at the same latitude of the wine-growing regions of France.
Bordeaux.
So, and that said, once we get to the growing season, we have a wonderful growing season here. It's our Arctic winters. Minnesota being in the center of the continent, we've got several winters where we'll get 25 below, 30 below. So you need to have a cold, hardy wine grape. And the University of Minnesota and a gentleman by the name of Elmer Swenson, who's just recently passed away, they're really responsible for this industry even existing. What the U has done for apples over the last 7,500 years, they're going to do with grapes too. I mean, they're right in our backyard. We're very lucky to have them. But anytime I go to a symposium or a conference there's people from, they've got international acclaim with their cold hardy grape research program now.
And I know a lot of the vineyards statewide here in Minnesota win awards throughout the state, even on the West Coast, East Coast. It's just a huge growing industry, and as you're saying, it looks like it's going to continue to grow and just get better and better.
Yeah, our this wine grape is called St. Pepin, and we're pretty proud of this one. Last year's vintage won a silver medal out at the San Francisco International Wine Competition, so we're pretty excited about that. That's got a lot of potential, we feel, in our vineyard.
John, we talked about when it's time to pick the grapes. What exactly is the process of actually picking the grapes? Do you have a great big machine that comes out? Do you have people out in the fields?
Sure.
Or in the vineyard? How's that work?
Okay. Yeah, once we make that determination that this variety is ready to be picked, that variety will be ready to be picked by such and such, we'll start scheduling our picking crews. And we do an awful lot of this with friends and family. I hire several of the high school kids that come in and help us with some of the heavier work, but it's oftentimes friends and family and volunteers. People sign up at the winery. They're very interested in this whole process, So we tell people all the time at the winery, we don't sell our wine just in the bottle. We sell the experience of the winery as well. And this whole thing, that's what it is. It's just, the fabric of it all is really what we're after. So we get that crew scheduled or whatever. Saturday we began picking, and we had 25 people here on Saturday picking, and we have a lunch, and it's kind of a fun, festive afternoon. Saturdays and Sundays we'll do that and provide a lunch and send people home with a bottle of wine for their efforts. And during the week, it's always a smaller crew, and we may even hold off picking a varietal until the end of the week when we have a much bigger crew. But when we do the picking, it's all done by hand. There is machine harvesting that's available, but you'd have to have a substantial number of acres to really justify the equipment, number one. And you have a little bit better control on quality when you're doing it by hand. So we really believe in hand picking. And we pick all the fruit off that vine. It may not all go into the lug to the winery, but we'll drop off any fruit right to the ground that's not worthy of going to the winery.
You have some lugs ready to go?
Yeah, sure.
Can I hitch a ride from you? We'll get over to the winery and see how it works from here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right, we've left the vineyard. We're back in Old Town, Cannon Falls. This is the winery. It's a beautiful building, John.
Yeah, yeah. This is an old historic building. This is on the historic register. The entire downtown district is on the historic register. This building was built as a car dealer back in 1920. It was the Lee Chevrolet car dealership right up until the early 2000s. And then we took the building over and renovated it into our winery. It's just has a ton of character and charm that you just can't build today.
It's beautiful.
When we started in on the demolition and renovation of this building, it was really important for us, like I said earlier, to sell the experience of the winery as well. So all our production is wide open to the public when they come in and view whatever we have going on that particular season. They're welcome to come in and view and enjoy. When we're bottling, for example, they can taste wine right from the tanks before it's going into the bottle. It's just a real fun experience.
Wonderful.
So,
I know you do some special events as well, weekend get-togethers. I've seen that you've had live music. I know that people can reach you on your website.
Right.
And possibly get some information on upcoming events, maybe new releases and things.
Yeah, we have release parties. Every time we have a new vintage that we're releasing, we'll have a party over that, have live music. We do weddings in here, we do corporate events in here, so it's just the whole character of the building lends itself very well to that. The stone wall that you see behind us here, that was kind of a treasure that we discovered during the demolition.
Oh.
That wall goes back to the 1870s. The whole town burned down back in the actually 1880s, and that stone wall had been covered up with lath and plaster, and when we started in on the demolition, we discovered that. So everything about that wall got brought into the winery.
That's wonderful.
So,
I see the production end on this end. Can we walk down there, meet
Yeah.
Vincent, and
Yeah.
see what's going on?
we'll get started on the crush.
Let's do it. Hi, Vincent.
How are you?
Good to see you again. This is Vincent Negrete, world-class winemaker right here in Minnesota at the Cannon River Winery. Vincent, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into producing wine?
Wonderful. We had a winery for 53 years in Colombia, South America. It started with my grandfather in 1937. After the drug dealers and the guerrillas made it impossible to continue, then we had to sell out everything and look for a better country to live in, and we came here in 2000. And 2 years ago, I joined John and Maureen with this project, which is a wonderful project for Minnesota.
Yeah, you must really enjoy working here. I know you've been with it since the inception, and it's going very well. You make fantastic wines here. We're in the production part now. This is where the meat works. This is where everything happens. Can you explain the process? I think today we're going to be doing some white wine, so it's a little different than red wine, but can you walk us through what's going to take place here?
Absolutely, yes. So the grapes were picked earlier, as you were there at the vineyard. We will first destem and crush them in a destemmer crusher that pulls out the stems and crushes the grapes and sends those crushed grapes into this machine, which is a press. It's a bladder press. Basically, it's a cylinder with holes and a bag that inflates and squeezes down the grapes, and the juice flows down into the pan underneath. From there, a pump takes the juice out and pumps it into a tank. Then that juice will be settled or clarified for 24 hours, racked to a fresh tank, and then inoculated with yeast. Yeast takes care of fermentation. That fermentation takes about 3 to 4 weeks, after which we have a wine, but it's very cloudy, and we have to continue settling it until it becomes clearer and clearer, then pass through a filter, and then if it's a young wine to be bottled, we can bottle at that point.
This is Maureen. We haven't had a chance to meet her yet. She was very busy in the vineyard getting the grapes that John and Vincent used to make the wine. She is the brains and the beauty behind the operation, does a lot of work right here in the winery itself, and I want to thank her very much for having invited us down here. Vincent, thank you for showing us the process. We really appreciate it. John, it was a pleasure seeing you as always, and thanks for having us down. Thanks for tuning in to Cellar Notes. We'll see you next time.
Here is a